Suddenly, the impossible happened. In a poor neighborhood on the outskirts of Los Angeles, everything came to a halt. What people were doing, where they were going, none of it mattered anymore. Everyone looked up to the sky, barely believing what they were seeing. Money. Yes, money. Falling from the sky. $100 bills, 50s, 20s, floating through the air like autumn leaves. Screams, chaos, laughter, tears. A helicopter hovered above the neighborhood, dropping bundles of cash, and attached to its side was a massive banner. A gift of gratitude, Malvin Edgar, owner of M.E. Supermarkets. The cameras arrived quickly. Local news was broadcasting everything. The crowd cheered, reached for the sky, celebrating like all their problems had just ended. But what no one knew was that this wasn't a gift, and the real show was just beginning. The phone rang right in the middle of Anna's second cup of coffee. A direct call from the newsroom. Urgent. "Anna, you need to come now. There's money falling from the sky in Eastwood Heights, literally," her producer said, nearly shouting on the other end. Anna didn't get it at first. "What do you mean, money from the sky?" "A helicopter is throwing dollar bills into the street. People are going crazy. Other networks are already heading there. Go now." She dropped her mug and ran, grabbed her purse, her jacket, and rushed down to the team van already waiting for her. Cameraman Max and sound tech Dave were ready to roll. As the van sped through the city, the team tried to make sense of what was happening. The local radio was already calling it the miracle in Eastwood Heights. A giant banner hanging from the side of the helicopter read, "A gift of gratitude from Malvin Edgar, owner of M.E. Supermarkets." Malvin Edgar was a known figure, owner of one of the largest low-cost supermarket chains in the state. He was a controversial character. Some called him a business genius, others an opportunist. But one thing was certain, he knew how to get attention. When they arrived, Anna was stunned by the scene. It looked like a festival. Children were running around with bags full of bills. Adults hugged each other. People were crying. It was real money, falling as if the universe was paying back years of suffering in a single day. She adjusted her mic, signaled to Max, and began broadcasting live. "We're here in Eastwood Heights where, unbelievably, it is literally raining money. According to the banner attached to the helicopter, this is an initiative by Malvin Edgar, owner of M.E. Supermarkets. As you can see, the crowd is in absolute ecstasy." As they filmed, Dave approached with a concerned look. He pointed to his earpiece and said, "There's something weird happening with our signal. A lot of interference." Anna frowned. "Interference?" "Yeah, I checked. It's coming from an encrypted source, and it's close, like within 3 or 4 blocks." A chill ran down her spine. That kind of gut feeling she couldn't explain, but had learned never to ignore from her days as an investigative reporter. Years ago, she had covered complex crimes, police operations, corruption. She knew when something wasn't right. "Max, Dave, we need to leave now. Let's follow that signal." The two exchanged hesitant glances. "Anna, are you sure? This place is blowing up." "Trust me, something's very wrong here." The van moved slowly through the surrounding streets, while Dave tracked the source of the interference using the communication equipment. After a few minutes, they reached the neighboring district, Willow District. It was a quieter, commercial area, with banks, offices, and a few closed shops. Everything felt strangely calm. Too calm. Dave pointed ahead. "The strongest signal is coming from over there, the bank." Anna told the driver to stop. They got out in silence. They took position behind a wall, cameras ready, making no noise. Minutes later, a sharp sound came from the bank. And then they appeared. 5 men, all masked, dressed in black, running toward a van parked out front. They were carrying heavy black bags. Money. They were robbing the bank. Anna held her breath. Max was filming everything. Dave was recording the sound. It was the proof they needed. That spectacle in the other neighborhood had been a distraction, a decoy. In the rush, one of the men stumbled getting into the van and his sleeve rode up, exposing part of his arm. A tattoo. A complex design. A circle surrounded by thorns. Anna froze. She knew that tattoo. Her fiancé Carl had the exact same one. A drawing he and his brother Malvin had made as teenagers. A symbol of their so-called brotherhood. It couldn't be. But it was. The man with that tattoo had to be Carl. Anna said nothing at first. She waited until the men got into the van and disappeared down the street. Once silence returned, she looked at Max and Dave. "You saw that?" "Yeah, and the camera caught everything." She tried to stay calm, to think, but her heart was pounding like a drum. What was Carl doing there? Was it really him? Could it just be a coincidence? They returned to the newsroom and aired the footage. It was a bombshell. While people were celebrating Malvin's generosity, the images showed that across town, a bank was being robbed. And everything pointed to the rain of money being a staged distraction meant to draw away the police and media. The story blew up on social media. Police were called in. The city descended into chaos. Meanwhile, Anna tried to piece everything together. That night, she asked Carl to come over to talk. He arrived smiling, as if nothing had happened. Anna did her best to hide the tension. "Where were you this morning?" she asked, trying to sound casual. "Playing tennis with the guys at the club." "Why? You stayed there all morning?" "Yeah, there was a little tournament." "Why the interrogation, love?" Anna stared at him. Carl was smiling, but his eyes looked evasive. She knew that look. She had seen it in interviews with criminals, that too perfect smile. "Just curious," she said. He got up, walked to the kitchen, and grabbed 2 glasses of wine. When he returned, Anna wasn't really there anymore. She was somewhere else, in her mind, in another time, remembering everything she had learned about investigation. Every instinct inside her screaming. Carl was lying. And if he was involved in that robbery, everything changed. The next chapter of her life, her whole story, would no longer be guided by love alone. She would have to choose between her heart and the truth. The following days were a whirlwind. While the city was still processing the footage of the bank robbery and the generous, though now suspicious, rain of money over Eastwood Heights, the police worked around the clock. On the morning of the following Thursday, the news exploded with a new bombshell. Police claimed to have found evidence that Malvin Edgar had orchestrated the robbery. According to the report, documents and encrypted messages were discovered on a laptop deliberately left at the headquarters of one of the ME Supermarket's locations. The messages detailed a plan to create a massive distraction in order to carry out the bank heist in the neighboring district. It was the kind of evidence that felt irrefutable, or at least appeared to be. Malvin was arrested immediately. Images of the businessman being taken away in handcuffs spread across all media outlets. The public reacted with shock. Many felt betrayed. Others simply confirmed their long-held suspicions. But in his cell, overwhelmed by anger and the feeling of injustice, Malvin decided to tell everything. In a statement to the police, he revealed the names of everyone involved in the robbery. Among them, the most unexpected of all, Carl Edgar, his own brother. The news leaked, and Anna was devastated. Still, part of her had already known. Carl, however, kept his composure. When summoned to testify, he presented a solid alibi. Security camera footage from the tennis club, witness statements, entry and exit logs, everything matched. He walked free. Worse,
He began claiming Malvin was trying to destroy him out of jealousy or as a way to share the blame. He gave quiet interviews, maintained a calm, victim-like image, and most importantly, he was the perfect boyfriend to Anna. Attentive, present, gentle. But Anna wasn't convinced. Her intuition screamed at her. The pieces didn't fit. The tattoo, Carl's expression, the coldness with which he lied while looking straight into her eyes, everything about Carl now felt dangerous. The truth, in fact, was even darker than Anna imagined. Carl had orchestrated everything. From the very beginning, he planned to frame his own brother. Those files that were found, planted by him. The messages, the digital trail, the laptop, all fabricated. Carl had always been more calculating than he let on, and he had only one goal: revenge. Years earlier, Malvin had made a business decision that severely impacted Carl, effectively pushing him out of the company's board of directors. Since then, Carl had vowed to get justice, his way. Now, with Malvin behind bars and the public turned against him, Carl was the hero of the story. He wore the mask of innocence while secretly manipulating everyone around him, including Anna. But not everything was under control. As the truth became tangled in public and private narratives, the people of Eastwood Heights began to wake up. Those who were once grateful began to realize how much they had been used. Outrage grew. Community organizations demanded answers. Protests erupted. Signs with messages like, "We are not pawns," and "They used us to rob," filled the streets. Public trust in Malvin collapsed. And with it, the reputation of Emmy supermarkets. Sales plummeted, franchises began closing, suppliers pulled out of contracts. The once thriving retail empire began to crumble like a house of cards. From his cell, Malvin cried out that he was innocent, and Carl, free, simply watched with a subtle smile on his face. Meanwhile, Anna struggled with the dilemma of whether to follow her heart or the truth that deep down she already knew.
A week after all the turmoil, Anna was trying to get back to some kind of routine, but the chaos around her kept reminding her the case was far from over. It was on a cold Tuesday morning that she walked into a cozy cafe downtown. She had barely taken off her coat when she heard a familiar voice from the counter. "Anna, look who finally decided to show up." She turned around, and there he was, Phil Donovan, a former cop, now a security consultant and private investigator, but above all, an old friend. For years, Phil had been Anna's most trusted source when she covered police cases. He always had access to the inside story. More than that, he trusted her, and she trusted him. "Phil," she said with a genuine smile, the first in days. They hugged like old war buddies, sat down at a corner table, away from curious ears, ordered 2 coffees, and after the usual small talk about life and the years gone by, Anna couldn't hold back. "I'm in the middle of something, Phil. Serious." He raised an eyebrow. "Does it have to do with that bank robbery? The so-called money rain?" "Exactly." Anna told him everything, from the day of the helicopter to Malvin's arrest. And then, the hardest part, her suspicion that Carl, her own fiancé, was the real mastermind behind it all. Phil was silent for a moment, just staring at her. Then he said, "You know, if that's true, it changes everything, right?" "I know, but I can't pretend I didn't see that tattoo. I can't ignore my gut." Phil nodded. "So what do you want me to do?" "Help me find out the truth, for real." "Consider it done." They sealed the deal with a silent handshake, just like so many times before, and thus a new investigation began.
Phil dug into Carl's alibi. First, he visited the tennis club where Carl claimed to have been on the morning of the robbery. He talked to the receptionist, reviewed the entry logs. Everything seemed in order. But something caught his attention. None of the security cameras showed Carl playing tennis, only him entering and leaving. He tracked down witnesses. 2 friends confirmed they had played with Carl that morning, but their accounts were vague, uncertain, as if rehearsed. Then Phil found a lead. A club employee who, unlike the others, didn't know Carl was a suspect. In an informal statement, she said she saw him arrive at the club in the morning, but soon after slip out discreetly through the back. She also said that the 2 men who'd claimed to have played with Carl had actually spent the morning in the sauna.
That was enough for Phil to press the right contacts and gain access to the club's internal footage. With patience and skill, he analyzed every second. And that's when he saw it. Carl entering, changing clothes, and then disappearing from the cameras for more than 3 hours. Crucial hours. The alibi was fake. Phil printed the footage, collected the testimonies, compiled the dossier, and arranged a meeting with Anna. When she saw everything, she couldn't hide her shock. It was real. It was definitive. Carl was involved in the robbery. And worse, he had manipulated everything, including her feelings. "I need to confront him," Anna said, her voice steady. "But in a way there's no turning back. I need a confession." "Want me to come with you?" "No, I have to do this alone. But I need you to help me with a hidden camera." The next night, Carl came home to find Anna calmer than expected. She welcomed him with a light dinner, soft music, and almost romantic atmosphere, just the way he liked it. During dessert, she brought up a conversation about justice, about regrets, about secrets, until, carefully, she said, "If you had the chance to get revenge on someone who wronged you, would you do it?" Carl laughed, swirling his wine glass. "I think everyone's thought about that at some point." "And what if it was your brother?" He stared at her, seriously for the first time. "Why are you asking me this?" Anna smiled, but her heart was racing. "Because I always had the impression you and Malvin had unfinished business, and sometimes I wonder if you wanted to see him pay." Carl was silent, the wine swirling in his glass. A slight smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "You think it was me, don't you? That I planned all this?" Anna said nothing. "You've always been smart, Anna. I knew I wouldn't fool you for long. But you know what? I don't regret it. He deserved it. He took everything from me, everything I built with him. He left me aside like I was nothing. I just gave him back what he gave me." Anna stayed silent, breathing deeply. The recorder hidden in her necklace captured every word. Carl went on. "That rain of money? My idea. The helicopter? I paid for it. The bank plan? I organized it. And yes, I was the one who planted the evidence in Mouse's office. I wanted to see him rot in jail. And now he's there. And I'm here." He stood up, proud of himself. "And you, Anna, what are you going to do with this information?" She stared at him, without blinking. The right thing. Anna stayed awake all night. Even with the truth revealed, even with Carl confessing everything, she couldn't sleep. The confession was recorded, the evidence gathered, the dossier solid. But her heart, it seemed not to have received all the proof. The emotional weight of that moment was brutal. Carl wasn't just her fiancé. He was the man she had made plans with, shared dreams, lived moments too real to have been fake. And now, every memory came heavy with doubt. How much of it had been a lie? When the sun finally broke through the windows, Anna made a decision. It's time. Anna and Philip went to the police station together. They handed over all the files, the recording, the transcripts of the statements, and the footage of Carl entering and leaving the tennis club. The detective, a direct and experienced woman, didn't hide her surprise. "This is conclusive. We will act immediately." That very afternoon, Carl was arrested. The images circulated across all news channels. The video confession went viral. The whole country was talking about the scandal. The brilliant and cruel plan of a man who used his own community as a distraction to commit one of the boldest robberies of the year. And worse, who framed his own brother out of revenge. Meanwhile, at the news station, Anna became the center of attention. Some congratulated her for her courage. Others whispered behind her back, amazed she had been involved with someone like Carl. But Anna didn't care about judgments. She knew she had done the right thing, even with a broken heart. Philip remained by her side, always discreet, always steady. When things seemed calm, he invited her to leave the city for a few days. "You need to breathe, Anna. This case was too heavy." "And you think some scenery will make me forget?" "It's not about forgetting. It's about remembering who you are. You're a brilliant journalist, brave, a woman of integrity. But you're also human, and humans need time to heal." She took a deep breath and agreed. They went to a small coastal town a few hours away. The sea air brought some lightness. Their conversations became relaxed again. Smiles started coming more often. And over time, Anna realized something that had always been there. Philip wasn't just an old friend. He was presence. He was care. He was truth. One quiet evening, sitting on the guest house porch with the sound of waves in the background, Anna said, "You know what hurt me the most about all this? It wasn't being deceived. It was doubting myself. For a while, I thought I was overreacting, that maybe I was seeing things that weren't there. But you believed me from the start. Because I know you, and I trust your instinct more than any evidence." She moved closer. The silence between them was comfortable, as if words were unnecessary. And right there, at that moment, the kiss happened. Natural, unhurried, as if life was finally giving Anna back some of the peace that had been taken from her. The days passed lightly. They walked on the beach, talked about everything and nothing, laughed at old stories, and for the first time in a long time, Anna allowed herself to think of the future with hope. When she returned to the city, she was no longer the same. Stronger, more centered, more selective about what mattered. Carl remained in jail awaiting trial. Malvin, with the help of good lawyers and the revelation of the setup, was released and now fought to rebuild his reputation and his supermarket chain, although part of the population remained suspicious. Anna decided not to return as a news anchor. She went back to investigative reporting, and together with Philip, she started developing an investigative journalism podcast, telling true stories of corruption, crimes, and manipulation, always with a human perspective and committed to the truth. The first season? The helicopter and the money rain case in Eastwood Heights. Anna learned that the truth, no matter how painful, would always be her best ally, and that loving someone didn't mean being blind. It meant, above all, being faithful to herself. And with Philip by her side, she knew she was exactly where she was meant to be.
The day of the trial finally arrived. The courtroom was packed, and the press surrounded the venue as if it were the event of the year. Anna was present, not as a reporter, but as part of the story. She felt the weight of every gaze that met hers, a mix of curiosity, judgment, and empathy. Carl Edgar was there, handcuffed, with a steady gaze, but visibly tense. The room was full of people who wanted justice, but also those who still couldn't believe everything that had happened. After all, Carl had been a charismatic man, and many doubted whether he was truly capable of such betrayal. The prosecution presented all the evidence: videos, testimonies, the recorded confession, and the dismantling of the alibi. The defense lawyer tried everything to discredit the evidence, but there was no denying the obvious. When the judge finally hammered down the verdict, the sentence was clear. Carl Edgar was convicted and sentenced to 15 years in prison for robbery, conspiracy, and evidence tampering. Anna felt a mix of relief and sadness. Justice had been served, but the emotional cost was too high. She returned home, still reflecting on everything she had lived through in recent months. But the story, as always, was not ready to end. A few days after the conviction, rumors began circulating inside the state prison. Carl was not willing to serve his sentence without a fight. He and some allies were starting to plot an escape plan that, if well executed, could be a Hollywood movie. The plan was clever. Carl, with his sharp mind and contacts, even inside the prison, had everything meticulously calculated. He would use a disguise, have accomplices in the security team, and even a vehicle waiting outside for the getaway. Meanwhile, Anna received secret information through an anonymous source. Phil warned her to be careful, but she couldn't contain her excitement. After all, Carl's story kept unfolding, and she knew this chapter would be crucial for the podcast. On the day of the attempt, the tension was at its peak. Carl prepared to execute the plan that could change his fate forever. He wore a mask and different clothes, ready to fool the guards. The accomplices, strategically positioned, began to move. But at the last minute, something went wrong. A communication failure, an extra guard on patrol, or perhaps luck was on the side of justice that night. The escape plan failed. Carl was quickly subdued, handcuffed, and transferred to a maximum security wing. When Anna heard what happened, she couldn't help but let out a nervous laugh. In her mind, she was already imagining the title of the next podcast episode, The Escape That Wasn't: How Carl Edgar Tried to Evade Justice. With a playful tone and a smile on her face, she confided in Phil. "If the guy thinks he's given me everything, he's very wrong. I still have a lot to tell, and the audience is going to love it." Phil laughed and replied, "The truth is, your ex-fiancé is becoming the star of the show. He's going to start charging royalties." Meanwhile, Anna and Phil's podcast was gaining more and more listeners. The combination of her journalistic insight, Phil's deep investigations, and the story's twists attracted thousands of listeners with each episode. They covered not only the robbery and the failed escape attempt, but also the consequences for the community, Malvin's fight to restore his reputation, and Anna's personal journey confronting betrayal and overcoming hardship. With every episode, new details emerged. Guests were interviewed, and experts in security and justice joined to discuss the case's developments. Anna gave voice to the victims, to the people of the neighborhood, and showed how one lie could affect an entire community. The success was so great that the podcast became a national reference in investigative journalism. Anna, once shaken and confused, now saw herself strengthened, inspiring others to seek the truth and not be deceived. Meanwhile, Carl, in prison, watched his story turn into a public narrative he couldn't control, with every detail exposed for the world to hear. And Anna knew, despite everything, this was just another phase of her journey, the chapter of the past that, with courage and determination, she would transform into a future of hope and justice. If you enjoyed this story full of twists, emotions, and hard truths, don't forget to follow our channel. Here, every story is made to keep you hooked from start to finish, with unforgettable characters, real dilemmas, and endings that make you think. Like, share, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next chapters. See you in the next story.